On today's episode of Car Literate, I'm going to go over how to change your brake pads on a standard braking system. So what's available on most cars is a floating sliding caliper, which is what my Miata has, and it's going to be the demo car for this video. So you can see I've got a set of EBC brakes. I've got their red stuff pad, which should be fairly good for autocross. I actually won this in a pad giveaway that EBC did on the Miata forum, so big shout out to EBC. Really appreciate the hookup on the free brake pads. This is not a paid promotion, by the way. They're not paying me to do this. I just happened to have won this and thought it would be a great video. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the process of how I get these guys in. And then I may even cover the process of bedding in the pads. So the first stage of this process is simply to loosen your lug nuts. And then after that, you're going to jack up the car. I've already got a 2x4 back there behind my car, so that when I'm jacking it up, it cannot roll backward. I've also got my e-brake on, but it pays to have redundancy here because you're going to be working around this, and the last thing you want is for the car to fall down and hurt yourself, hurt your car. So let's go ahead and start this process. Alright, so I've got one socket on my wheel lock key, and I've got another socket just directly on my lug nut. I'm going to go ahead and break these both. That's one. Go diagonally across. That's two. Now let's do the other two. That's that. That's that. Let's go ahead and jack the car up. The reason you do this before jacking the car up is pretty simple. Once the car's in the air, if you try to undo the lug nuts, the wheel's going to spin and you're not going to be able to undo the lug nuts unless you're using an impact driver, in which case you do it with the car in the air and it doesn't matter. It has, torque applied just such that it can turn the nuts without turning the wheels. My dog is crying. There's a female dog in heat and he wants to run to her, but I won't let him. Let's get this little guy in the air. Always keep an eye on your pinch weld. Make sure you're not bending it as you're jacking the car up. Slowly put it down on the jack stand. Now I'll go ahead and do the other side. So as I lift up on the other side, you're going to see that back tire actually start to come down. It's fairly normal. This car has a short wheelbase, so when you jack up one side, it tends to bring up the whole side, and especially in my case because I have frame rails that stiffen it. So let's go ahead and jack up that other side so you guys can see that. Alright, so let's go ahead and remove this wheel. Look at these tiny little brakes. I eat pizzas bigger than this. Okay. So at this point we need to undo this upper bolt and we need to loosen the lower one. By doing that, I'll be able to swing this part out of the way and access the brake pads. There we go. It's on there pretty tight. I'm impressed. Means the last time I did this I was in good shape. So the lower bolt is actually larger size. This was a 14 mil. The lower bolt is a 17 mil. It's nice and loose now. Let's get out the upper bolt. Alright, that's out. Let's go ahead and see if we can't wedge this free. Take this screwdriver here. Let's kind of put it in there and pry on it. And there we go. So we can go ahead and remove these pads. And mind you, these pads aren't in bad shape. They're just not very good pads. And since I got brand new ones for free, why not? Alright, so these are out. Let's go ahead and put in our new pads. Alright, so here's my UBC red stuff. Did come with a little bit of this grease. You put that on the back of the pad and it just reduces noise from the brake pads, squeal and such. So I'm gonna go ahead and apply some of that. You don't need a ton of it, by the way. Just use a little bit on each pad. Kind of get it around here. That's probably more than I need, to be honest. I'll go ahead and wipe off the excess with a rag once I'm done spreading this. So you don't want this getting onto your rotor, because then it will foul your pads. Alright, you just want that, a little bit of it. Basically just enough to like finger paint it onto the surfaces. Let's go ahead and put the brake pad in. Start with pad number 1. Alright, kind of put it at an angle, then slide the little ears in. That's one. Then we'll go ahead and do the other one in the very same fashion. Be a little bit more annoying just because you can't see on that side. But same general idea. Kind of tilt it in. And hope that the ears are able to reach the little slots. And sit down, and I think that's it. And in the name of efficiency, yep, slides right on. Let's put the upper bolt back in and tighten the bottom one as well, and we'll be done. Make sure that you compress the little boot that's here so that this can go in straight into the boot and thread it. That. Let's do a 17 on the bottom. And tight. And we'll come in here. That's on pretty tight. Alright, that's that. Let's go do the other side. Alright, so now we're going to do the passenger side, and this is going to be exactly the same. Loosen the lower bolt, remove the upper bolt, move this out of the way, take the pads out, swap the pads. Okay. Okay, that's loose. Okay, so that's really interesting. So, random factoid about Miata caliper bolts. The size of the bolt is inverted from driver to passenger side. So, this bigger 17 head bolt will not fit in this lower slot. It only fits the upper. So if you go to the other side, the smaller bolt is on the top and the bigger bolt is on the bottom. It's a very unusual design. You don't really see stuff like that very often. It's a very, very odd choice, I guess. Not one that I would have made, but suppose the engineers at Mazda know what they're doing, right? They built the Miata. It's a great car. It's the answer to everything. So I won't question it. Ah, my least favorite thing. The little metal clip shim things start falling out. Super annoying. There we go. Got one in. Let's do the other one. And this one will be easy, both because it's in the front where you have the best view and because there's no loose shim. So simply slide it in. And there we go. Now we have the work of putting that caliper back on, so we got to compress it. Easy peasy. Now that I have my modified caliper compression tool, so the curvature should always be into the caliper. Place a piece of wood here just to help compress evenly. Take our impact driver and make short work of this. Yep, nice and compressed. Let's turn the steering wheel a little bit just so I'm not straining my brake line. that's tightened down now. There's definitely a torque that you should torque that down to, and you can find that in your manual. I'm gonna look that up and do it with a torque wrench, but there's not really much to show. I'll just look up the torque, I'll set the torque wrench to that, I'll grab this, turn it, you'll hear click, and that's it. Alright, so the brake pads are installed. Now there's just a couple things I have to do. The first is to bring the car down. The next one is to pump the brakes. Now if you think about one of the things that I did to install the pads, it was to compress the brake caliper pistons. They're going to stay compressed until you pump the brakes. So if you were to foolishly put this car down and then try to back out, you would quickly discover that you have no brakes. The reason is that the pistons are not really pushing the pads up. So you need to pump the brakes in order to put the pistons back into position, and then your brakes will work as intended. Alright, so let's turn the car on and pump the brakes up. See how easily it went to the floor and it started giving it a little bit more resistance? Now it's a lot tighter. And that's the entire process of how you change your brake pads. There's only one little detail that I did not show, and that is the long and boring process of me holding a little piece of sandpaper and rolling the rotors around with it on the surfaces in order to clean any deposits off of the previous pads. This is more critical with high performance brakes and high performance brake pads in particular. In the case of this car, I didn't really go too hard with that simply because I was using some auto parts brake pads that I never even really bedded in properly anyway. So there's probably no deposits really that had to be cleaned off, but it's a good idea to go ahead and do it anyway. So at this point, the car is ready to rock. I'm going to go ahead and bed these brake pads. It's really just going to be to drive it around, do a few quick stops, and once I get the pads a little bit more seated, I'll probably do some 60 to 40 and 60 to 20 stops in order to get them really bedded in. Each pad is going to have a different bedding procedure, so just make sure you read the instructions that apply to your particular pad. If you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you're notified when I post another video. And if you have any feedback, feel free to leave that in the comments section. And as always, thank you for watching.